Welcome back to another live edition of the Buckeye Talk Show on Wednesdays every week at 11 a.m. I am Stephen Means, that's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. And you can't see him, but producer Brennan is with us. And every week he provides more of a reason for why this show is awesome. We have graphics. We're like a real television show now. We have graphics, we have lighting, we have microphones. We're live every week at 11. Stefan, like we're growing up, man. It's great.
Buckeye Talk is growing up right before your eyes, folks. It's happening.
Gillis, would you consider us to be a sophisticated enough show now that we deserve an Emmy Award?
No. I would not yet.
I don't technically think we're eligible, but
I was gonna say I don't think we're good for an Emmy, and I was gonna say like the most sophisticated person on the show is Brennan. I don't know if it's us three, so I don't know if we can be considered that.
I'm gonna look up what you need to be. What is it called? Nominated for an Emmy?
I think you have to be on television.
No, you don't. You can win an Emmy for a podcast.
You sure?
I think you can.
All right.
Yeah, Brennan. Yeah, it's a new. I don't know if they can hear us. Brennan. They can't hear Brennan. Brennan is saying there is a new podcast category to go. Okay, so we can win a Golden Globe.
All right. Golden Globe would be fine.
Yeah.
Any award would be fine.
Yeah, man. I mean, not any award. I mean, there's some awards I don't necessarily want to win. Like if there's an award for the worst person alive, I don't want that award.
All right.
None of this has anything to do with what we're talking about today, by the way. I'm just vamping a little bit so Brendan can finish up what he needs to finish up because I'm a good host and I care about my producer, especially when he's a college kid who's had a long week. But that's okay. Get the text 614-350-3315. Today we are projecting the Big Ten over the next 5 years. We've done this in the past where we've tiered the Big Ten teams, but there's so much happening right now in college football that matters for the future of the sport that we thought about just projecting that over the next 5 years. So producer Brennan, if you're with me, if you're ready, let's put our tiers up on the screen. Hey, those are our tiers. Tier number 1, natty or bust. That just means over the next 3 to 5 years, you are in a position to win a national championship. Like it's a realistic expectation for you going into the year. We look at what you are and go, okay, 3 of the next 5 years, if you won a national championship, we could wrap our heads around that idea of you being able to do that. Tier number 2, college football playoff or bust. If you miss the college football playoff more than twice, it's probably a failure of the next 5 years, given roster, given coaching, giving expectations, all those different things into the mix. Tier number 3, the potential sleepers. This is where we try to predict the next Indiana, meaning a team no one is thinking about right now. Because if we'd have done this, 24 months ago, Stefan, we wouldn't have projected that Indiana would have been in the first 2 tiers, right? And if one of us would have said, hey, don't sleep on Indiana. They just hired a new head coach in Kirk Cignetti. He's done a lot of winning. He talked a lot of trash. There might be something juicy going on there. We would have looked at you and gone, shut up. Indiana sucks. And then you'd have been coming to us 2 years later like, ha, I told you. Tier number 4, endangered species. If they are not careful, they could find themselves stumbling down the hierarchy. And I think this is an important tier because if teams are going to rise, somebody has to fall. And I do think there are some teams, at least on my tiers list, where this tier bracket, it's not a lot of teams, but there are some teams in here that I think are worth discussing because again, if somebody's going to rise up into the potential sleepers or CFP or bust or natty or bust, that means there are teams who are up there who probably have to fall because you can't have 9 teams in the first 2 tiers. It just doesn't make any sense, right? Tier number 5, they're rebuilding. These are the bottom tier teams. Maybe there'll be something, maybe they won't, because maybe they're in the first couple of years of the head coach who is trying to revive something, or it's just too early to tell right now. And then tier number 6 is the hopeless. No era of college football could ever make this a winning situation. And that is hyperbole. But listen, this is the era of Vanderbilt, Indiana, or college football playoff teams. If you can't thrive in this era when those 2 teams are potential playoff teams, you can't thrive in any college football playoff era. I don't care how many times we extend this. Stefan, I want to start with you. Don't get into your list yet. But what is your largest tier?
I believe it is I have a tie. Tier 2 and Tier 3 both have 5 teams in it for me, and I think that's interesting because I think you have I think you're just in a space in the Big Ten where there's a lot of teams that consistently expect to be in the mix to make the college football playoff, but you've also got a lot of teams who have kind of shown, hey, we can maybe knock someone down and move ourselves up, right? I think, we talked about this last year in 2024, maybe after Big Ten Media Days, if I remember correctly, of just we know kind of who, and this was obviously before Indiana even really entered the mix, but we know the 2, 3, 4 programs in the Big Ten that consistently have national championship expectations or high expectations. Now, they might not always compete for a national title, right? There might be ups and downs. And Ohio State seems to be the only team in college football that has consistently, stayed at a certain level the last 50 years or whatever. Like, a lot of teams will have up and downs, but these 3 or 4 teams we know are consistently at the top. And we were kind of telling ourselves, like, okay, who from this mix of like 10 teams is going to emerge to consistently be part of the conversation, right? I think we threw out Wisconsin. They were pretty early in the Fickle era. We threw out Nebraska pretty early in the Matt Rule era. Like, which of these teams is really going to elevate itself to maybe be part of the mix with the Ohio States, the Oregons? Michigan was fresh off a national title. That's kind of the conversation we were having. And I think that's why Tier 2 and Tier 3 is so interesting to me, because I have 10 teams in those 2 tiers, between those 2 tiers, that there could be a lot of movement any given year. And I think trying to project over these next 5 years is kind of a fun experiment, because it's a lot tighter than maybe you would expect just by looking at name recognition or name brand. Because in the Big Ten, we talk about teams equally and opportunities, and teams can move. Where in the SEC, it's like, oh, everyone's a national title contender. Well, that's not necessarily true.
You mean we have reasonable conversations about the teams in our conferences? You can say that. It's okay to say that. Gillis, what is your largest tier?
It's a tie. I have 4 teams in Tier 2, and I have 4 teams in Tier 4. So yeah, I think to Stefan's point, I mapped out my list, and I think it is interesting that you have teams at the top that are looking to kind of enter that Tier 1 category. I think you have an interesting group of teams that are maybe pretty solid, maybe rebuilt. Like how we'll get to Tier 4 when we get there. I have an interesting group of teams here, and it's just like you said, I think you said if they're not careful, they could find themselves stumbling. There's some interesting teams that just we can talk about in a minute, but that in this era, like you said, I don't know if it necessarily has to be. Well, if one team moves up, one team has to move down, right? Indiana moving up, I don't know if they necessarily like supplanted anybody. I just think Indiana moved up and became a national championship contender, right? They became one of the best programs in college football. I don't think their rise necessarily was a 1-for-1 trade-off of, well, now somebody's got to go down. You could have 10 teams in the CFP or bust category, if you want to get there down the line. But I think that's an interesting look where we're going to be headed, because who knows what the sport's going to look like, what the playoffs going to look like in 5 years. When we get to the end of the decade, is it 12? Is it 16? Is it 18? Is it 64? Like, I don't know. We'll see what the playoff looks like. But for now, you have an interesting mix of teams who are in that you should be here, and you have an interesting group of teams that where it's, man, you are kind of in danger of slipping here, and that could really, really put a hurting on your program.
Okay, Stefan, you're going to kick us off, and we're going to start at the bottom with our hopelessness category. Hopefully, I didn't just mess up what Brennan wanted to do there. At least I hope I really didn't. But listen, we're learning along the way. This is called learning on the job. I'm Brian Hartline. I'm learning on the job when I want to run the ball and when I want to throw the ball, even though I should throw the ball every single time. Stefan, let's start off with your hopelessness tier. Who's at the bottom for you? And we're not going to go long with every single one of these teams. So if like there's like a consensus, we're just gonna whoever says it first, say your piece, and we'll just go like, yeah, I agree. That's where I have this tier. Like, because if not, we'll be here for 4 hours.
Yeah. I think Purdue is. I think UCLA might come as a surprise to some. I think Purdue, just where they are right now as a program, I really thought I started to buy into them a little bit this year relative to like expectations, and I think they've been significantly better than last year.
Mm-hmm.
But losing to Rutgers, like that was just tough. I really thought that they were going to get themselves a Big Ten win, and they didn't do that. And it's not looking great for the folks in West Lafayette. And I have questions about their NIL commitment as it pertains to football, and just what is the pool looking like? And for a school that has so much investment in basketball, and rightfully so. I mean, they're consistently, they're preseason number 1 this year, and they're consistently toward the top of basketball. Like you got to find ways to allocate your resources, and what does that look like? For an athletic department like Purdue, I don't have a lot of faith in what these next 5 years could mean for their football program. And UCLA, I put in that mix because it's funny. I mean, they just had some of the better wins of recent UCLA history, and they've had their time under Chip Kelly in the Pac-12 wasn't horrible, right? Like they were winning 8-9 games, in certain seasons, but this coaching change is coming. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, who they're going to bring in, but it felt like the Penn State win, the Maryland win, I'm blanking on what the third win was that they had. It just kind of felt like, it was this spark, this interim coach spark, and it was kind of a new life to a program that needed it. And, Nico could do some things, and they rattled off some nice wins. And big picture, though, I just don't know where they fit in the conversation next 5 year. Resources, for me, like resources play a huge part in these conversations, kind of where teams fit in these certain tiers. And I don't know what UCLA can do over these next 5 years to really change my mind on where they stand kind of in the grand scheme of the Big Ten conversation.
I have these two in the same tier together, but it's not this tier. Gillis, do you have these two teams together, and are they in this tier?
Yeah, I'm not going to rehash what Stefan said, but with Purdue, It's the same thing. They're the third most popular college football team in their state. It's not going great for them. I don't see that getting much better for them. And then with UCLA, UCLA was the team that I did the most research on for this, believe it or not. There was a really, really good Yahoo Sports article. Basically, I think the title exactly was "What's Wrong with UCLA Football?" And it's not a money issue. They went out and they paid Nico Iamaleava a lot of money. It's not an NIL issue. I'm going to be blunt. Everything that I have read about from fans, I was reading message boards, I was reading Reddit pages, I was reading fan comment, I was reading everything. And UCLA is run by incompetency, and the money has been there. Chip Kelly did not do a good job of doing the things that a program needed to do to set up an NIL program. He had a quote where it was like, yeah, somebody asked him, like, would you set up their NIL collective, or would you help contribute? And he said, well, I'm not going to put on a shirt and do a commercial if that's what you're asking, which is just a hilarious comment in today's day and age. And it looks like it's aging like milk as time goes on. It's not that UCLA doesn't have the money in the NIL collective. It's that they don't really know what they're doing. The fan support is not there. I mean, USC is always going to be a more popular program in that city. We saw they're tarping off the Rose Bowl, like just to get, some kind of aesthetically pleasing looking thing going on there. Like it's not great for UCLA. And it's not whereas with Purdue, like you said, Stefan, it's like an NIL thing. With UCLA, it's not a money thing. Like the money's there, even though their athletic department is in some trouble. I think the Big Ten will help out with that. I don't trust that leadership. Like that was one of the reasons why Chip Kelly left, besides the whole I just want to coach ball thing. He saw the writing on the wall of UCLA just being a mess. I think UCLA, while they have maybe the highest ceiling of anybody in my hopeless tier and my rebuilding tier and in some of my endangered species tier, I can't trust that leadership because they haven't done it for more than 25 years now.
So I don't have them in my hopeless tier. I have them as my only two teams in my rebuilding tier. And Brennan, you don't have to put that graphic up if you don't want to. You don't have to. These are the ones. Yeah, you can keep this one up because we're just going to use this to get into the next tier. Let me touch on UCLA and Purdue first. The reason I don't have them in my hopeless tier, even though the reasons both of you guys have pointed out are why you would have them in the hopeless tier, because it's a combination of they're not good football programs. And do you see a path for them to be decent football programs, right? Based on not just the coaching, but like the leadership above them, right? Like Martin Jarman at UCLA, that's not going well from a football standpoint, and that's your biggest moneymaker. But I don't see anything that about them that is that different from Indiana. Indiana struck gold, realized it struck gold, and then invested in it, right? Because it's how many Kirk Cignettis are out there that you can go, oh, everybody go get their Kirk Cignetti. It almost has to happen, right? It has to happen, Andrew, before you acknowledge it, because you wouldn't have even predicted Kirk Cignetti to do all this. No. Indiana's about to make two. Indiana is a month away from having more college football playoff appearances than Penn State. Indiana is 30 days away from having the same number of college football playoff appearances as Michigan. Who could have predicted that 24 months ago? So because of that, I'm not saying that UCLA is going to go find a dude and all of a sudden they're going to turn into this magical program over the next 24 years. I'm also not saying they're not. And the same thing with Purdue. Purdue's in the first year of Barry Odom. So we'll see what happens. Purdue has had some respectable years. Now, I do think that Purdue, Wisconsin, who I'm going to talk about here in a second in my hopeless tier, benefited from having to be in the Big Ten West, which was always the weaker conference division in the conference. I understand that, but we are in the land of anything is possible in college football. And all it takes sometimes, the thing that Indiana taught me was all it takes sometimes is you make the right hire that's so great that it's even better than you could have possibly expected it to be. And it makes you have to rethink how you're going to approach things as an administration. Right? Do you think, Stefan, that Indiana is approaching football the way it does if Kirk Cignetti isn't as magical over the last 24 months as he's been?
It's definitely gone up a notch. I will say Indiana did take a step toward investing when it got rid of Tom Allen, right? I think there was a group of fans who essentially said, if you fire Tom Allen and kind of eat this buyout, we will put more into the NIL. So it kind of like went hand in hand. And I think that's why Kirk Cignetti maybe walked into a better situation than people thought nationally. Obviously, no one thought it was going to turn into this. So there has been another level. That got me thinking a bit about Purdue and you talking about some of the success they had. I mean, they've beaten Ohio State multiple times more recently than Indiana has. I mean, it's been like decades since Indiana beat Ohio State. Like Purdue was doing that. Purdue. And I get it. There's the hometown ties and things like that with Jeff Brom going to Louisville, but like it feels like a missed opportunity there. Like what Indiana did with Cignetti, if Purdue could have projected like here's how college football is about to change, here's what's going to happen. Like they're probably looking back now, being like, and maybe there was no chance of keeping Jeff Brom. Maybe he was always going to end up at Louisville. But like, I wonder if you're looking back right now, being like, if we had done with Brom what Indiana's doing with Cignetti, just in terms of the level of investment, I don't know. I could see those Brom teams could have easily had 10-2, 11-1 seasons in the current Big Ten landscape and made a college football playoff.
Because all it takes is the right hire, a little bit of investment, and maybe a schedule that gets you by in year one.
Yeah.
And that's what Indiana had. And you see, and the official schedule is not out yet for the Big Ten, which is kind of weird. It's almost November, and we don't have next year's like full slate of schedule yet. You're almost anticipating sometime in the next 20 days that's probably going to come out because, I don't know, planning, I guess. But Barry Odom's in year one, so you want to give it a level of grace. UCLA just fired its head coach. And am I maybe putting too much shine on the interim bump that you can get sometimes? Probably doing that because they're coming back down to earth right now. But let's see who they hire. And if it feels inspiring, you can give 5% of interest in it. So both of these teams are almost, they're in the rebuilding tier for me. But like, if they're in the hopeless tier, 6 months from now, it's like, all right, well, I was wrong. It's whatever.
It is interesting too to think of like UCLA has been relatively successful in terms of getting guys for the most important position in the sport.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, say what you will about ATR, but he started NFL games for the Cleveland Browns. Like,
Yeah.
what, a year ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, we see what Dante Moore is doing. He started at UCLA. Like, we see what, Nico's got more of a recruiting profile than maybe production, but led a Tennessee team to the playoff, and now he's at UCLA. Like, I can see the path both for Purdue and for UCLA to not be in this tier. Like, I get that. And I think quarterback is a big part of it, especially when you see what UCLA has done.
And Chip Kelly, I mean, he left because he didn't want to deal with college football anymore. Like, they could have put they could put full investment in the UCLA football, and Chip Kelly would be like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to. You told the joke he told, and yeah, that was kind of the point. I don't want to fundraise. I don't want to go shake this person's hand. I don't want to speak at this event. I don't want to. All the things you technically have to do as a head coach now in college football, he didn't want to do that. He just wanted to scheme up play calls. Okay. Even with the bad attitude, they went 8-4, 9-4, 8-5 with a bowl win his last 3 years there. So even a bad attitude, Chip Kelly, who was throwing a temper tantrum every single weekend, he still found a way to have success at UCLA. So that's why it's not hopeless to me. If you could find a way to flirt with 10 wins when your coach is throwing a temper tantrum, doesn't want to be there, and the administration is not investing as much as they should, what happens if the coach isn't throwing a temper tantrum and they start investing? Who knows? It's not like USC is lighting the world on fire. In fact, UCLA, from a recruiting standpoint, has probably had more success with quarterback recruiting than USC. I think you can make that case. Where's Lincoln Riley's Dante Moore?
Playing for the Chicago Bears.
I was going to say Miller Roth is doing pretty good with Louisville.
Oh, so like the guy he lost. And now Jaden Mayeva's looked pretty good.
Yeah, Mayeva's looked good.
Didn't UCLA lose Dante Moore?
After Chip Kelly left.
He still left.
He did leave. Lincoln Riley hasn't had a 5-star quarterback signed since he left for USC yet. And you're saying, oh, he plays for Chicago Bears. He brought him with him from Oklahoma. That's old baggage. That's like Deion Sanders taking his son and bringing him to Colorado. Not the same thing. We just went 20 minutes on the hopeless category. We can't do that. Rebuilding. Oh, no, my hopeless category. We're still not done. Wisconsin, Maryland, and Rutgers. And I'm going to run off very quickly here. Rutgers, I'm just not sure where Rutgers is supposed to go. It's just not. There's no room for growth. I just think they are what they are. Wisconsin, I think more than any other traditional Big Ten team benefited from divisions.
Mm-hmm.
And now they can't benefit from it. And Luke Fickell has not worked out. It's unfortunate. He tried to do something he never should have tried to do, and that's try to turn a traditional running school into a throwing school. But also, this dude took Cincinnati to the playoffs, man. So how has this gone that bad? So if he can't figure this out, I'm just not sure where Wisconsin. It's one of those things where I think if we'd have done this in June, I would have had them in the endangered species category, because it's like, hey, man, you don't have any of the benefits you had from back in the day, and it's already going bad. It can only get worse, and it's gotten worse. Oregon messed up and finally let them score after 3 games. Like, it's not getting better, and I don't see signs of even. Sure, you might fire Luke Fickell. If you don't do it this year, you're going to do it next year. But then now you're in a situation where the next guy's got to revive the program, and I'm not sure they can do that. And then Maryland's perspective is this. Maryland could very easily be in the playoff hunt right now. They don't know how to win. And Mike Loxley is in like year 5 or 6, and his program still doesn't know how to win. That's hopeless to me, because you're almost James Franklin light, where every single week, big game or not, you're in it, and then you get to the fourth quarter and you fall apart. They have been leading, and I think the last 4 games heading into the fourth quarter, and then scored like 10 points in the fourth quarter and got outscored like 100-10. in the fourth quarter. You don't know how to win. And how do you fix that? You're just a loser. So that's my hope list here. The floor is yours, Stefan.
Yeah. Are we moving on to the next tier then?
Yeah, we can move on to the next tier.
Yeah. Rebuilding tier. So I got 3 teams in this tier.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm still. I am like the only optimistic like Wisconsin person
You are
in the world.
You are.
I don't think Wisconsin is investing at a level that Wisconsin should be investing, and that's not to say that Luke Fickell deserves more of the schools or the fans' money. Like I get that there's probably a change coming at the helm, but it just feels like if Wisconsin can kind of figure out how to properly do this whole thing, that there is still untapped potential in terms of them being in kind of the playoff conversation, maybe in 3 years or something like that. I don't know. I went back and forth between rebuilding and hopeless. And I think them kind of being in an in-between of like what they want to do with their coach is maybe what persuade, like if Fickell comes back for another year, maybe I lean more toward hopeless. If they decide to make a change, maybe I think it's more rebuilding. I kind of want to see what happens there before I entirely give up on them. Yeah, Rutgers, I get your case for hopeless. I think Rutgers too, like maybe their best bet over the course of these next 5 years is to make a change. I mean, Shiano's obviously had so many good moments there, but it kind of feels like it's like trying to recreate something that's it's different now. Like it's not what it used to be. You know what I mean?
Can I ask you a question about Rutgers? And this is not to try to convince you to change it because the graphics have been made, so nobody's changing. That's the thing about graphics. I can no longer convince people to join my side or get them to convince me to join their side of things. You have to live with this because if not, we're going to be giving Brennan extra work, and we can't do that. Greg Schiano was like presented as the perfect Rutgers guy, right? Especially what he had done in the last time that he was Rutgers head coach. He's a guy from that area. Like if anybody was going to turn Rutgers into something, it's going to be Greg Schiano. And now here we are, 2023-6, 5-8-21, 4-8-22, 7-6 the next 2 years, and now he's 4-4. Where, quite frankly, he probably should have lost to OU, but he didn't. It's fine. Is there any element to Rutgers where it's like if Greg Schiano can't turn this into something, maybe nobody can?
Yeah, I get that. I think that's something I've been thinking about with the Brian Kelly thing at LSU, where it's like he wasn't a fit. Like it was never going to work. I don't know, man. If Brian Kelly was going 11-1, 12-0, it was a fit. No one cared that he was saying family. So, like, if Ed Orgeron was a great coach and he came to Rutgers and started winning, I don't think anyone would care that Mr. Gumbo is watching Sopranos. Like it's fine. Like it can work. I think winning football is the mix. I think the Greg Schiano thing has turned out almost kind of the inverse, where it's like they keep thinking like this is the only guy that can fix Rutgers football. I don't know. Like Kurt Cignetti came to Indiana. You know what I mean? Like it's not necessarily Lane Kiffin was at USC and like coaching in the NFL, and he's in Oxford, Mississippi now, winning football games. Like not every story is Kirby Smart going home and that works. Like it's not like Nick Saban was born and raised in Birmingham. You know what I'm saying? Like I think the Greg Schiano thing has almost gone to the inverse, where it's like this is the guy who's the savior of Rutgers, and it's like I don't know. What if you brought in a good coach and he saved Rutgers? And I don't like maybe he's from Los Angeles. Who cares? Like so. I another team that I went back and forth with. I think I put them here just because I'm not sure yet. I don't know what they want to do, and if they kind of see this and say, hey, it's Schiano for the next 5 years, then yeah, I'd probably put them in my hopeless tier because I just don't know where it's going. But I feel like maybe there is just this untapped potential. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic of like someone can come in and kind of like grab Rutgers by the shoulders and be like, this is how we're going to do things. We're not just going to do it the way everyone thinks Rutgers has to go about their business. And Michigan State's kind of in that boat for me too. I maybe would have been better and endangered, but I'm still not entirely sure what to make of the Smith experiment there. It feels like it's kind of teetering on, okay, how much longer are we going to view this as a rebuild before it becomes, a disaster?
Right.
That was such an impossible situation to walk into.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if Oregon State wasn't bottoming out the way it was, would he have thought, or would he have hesitated more about taking the job at Michigan State? Would he have waited? Like he couldn't wait at Oregon State. That was, we all know what's happening at Oregon State and Washington State. Like, he couldn't wait. And I think that kind of forced him to maybe walk into a tough situation at Michigan State. So I just don't know what to make of it quite yet.
Gillis, what's your rebuilding tier? I'm going to hold off on my Michigan State comments.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Rutgers.
Did you guys just like call each other?
No, I think we're gonna have some differences here coming up, but I Michigan State, I didn't really know where to put them. It just kind of feels like they're a perpetually rebuilding program. Or an
endangered species.
I don't think that there are programs that we'll get to why that I think have better investment and better situations. Wisconsin, I mean, when your AD has to release a statement saying we believe in the head coach, it means the head coach is in trouble. But this one was especially stupid because he had to release a statement and he was like, hey, we're going to increase the program's funding. It's like, well, how come you weren't doing that in the first place? And if you were talking about the program's funding, shouldn't we be talking about you and your job? So
that's a dude who's also trying to save his own butt.
Yeah, they're all trying to protect their six on whatever street they play in Madison. They are all trying to save their own jobs. So Wisconsin, we've seen it. We've seen them be successful. I think one of the things that this coaching cycle can teach us, and specifically like Brian Kelly getting fired, is like sometimes cultural fit is important. You can't turn someone or something into something that it's not. And, maybe you can enhance it to a different degree. Luke Fickell tried to change the identity of Wisconsin. And I know all of his quarterbacks walk out onto the field and immediately suffer a catastrophic injury, but it just has not worked. Rutgers, the only thing I'll say about it, Greg Schiano, the man who can save Rutgers football. Do you know what his winning percentage is? Do you guys know? Like, do you have a guess as to what his winning percentage is at Rutgers in his 2 stints?
Like 55.
I was going to say the 400s.
482. He's not a 500 coach at Rutgers. And if you're hyping that guy up as maybe
also Rutgers.
I was kind of with Stefan. It's like you're not dead in the water, but you are teetering where, we saw how bad it could get when they had Chris Ash before. Like we saw what it could look like. Maybe maybe a change does them good, but I think they are just going to kind of be a perpetual 6-6 team with Schiano, and they're going to be perpetually rebuilding towards something. And I don't know what that is. So
if they're perpetually rebuilding, that sounds like this hopeless then. Because when I think of rebuilding, it's like you're eventually going to go somewhere. I mean, if you're constantly rebuild, I just I don't know. Like for me, if you are constantly in one state, and that state is, we think we're headed somewhere, but you never actually go somewhere, that's when you start to sound hopeless.
To me, like the rebuilding thing was, there's always a carrot to chase, right? There's always the carrot on the stick in front of you of like, oh, maybe, this is possible, or this is possible, or this is possible. And with Purdue and UCLA, the reason I had them at tier 6 is because I don't think there is a carrot or a stick because they're not paying for it. I don't think that they are chasing anything. I don't think that they're like, what is Purdue's long-term goal? What is UCLA's long-term goal? I have no idea. Like Rutgers' long-term goal is very clear. Like, let's become a 7-8 win team. Like, let's take that next step. Let's beat a Washington. Let's beat a Michigan one year. Let's beat this and what, like there are tangible steps that are not insane for Rutgers to get to. For UCLA and Purdue, it's like, we need to change the entirety of what we're doing. And in today's landscape of college football, you're going to get left behind.
Okay. We've talked about my tier 5 already. UCLA and Purdue. I talked about that. You can put it up on the screen if you want, Brennan. You don't have to, though, because I think I'm just going to transition into my endangered species tier where I can talk about Michigan State. So there it is. Brennan did the graphic, so we have to put it up. He did the hard work, and so we have to reward him with it. Those are my tiers. I'll just reiterate my point. It's early. One team just fired its head coach, and which for me, you fire your head coach, that means it was at least unacceptable. It means you're going to try to do something. Let's see if it actually works out. In Purdue, it's year one. Let's see how it goes. Stefan, let's move into tier 4, the endangered species category, because I do think this is where we can start to have some more meaty conversations about this. So,
yeah, I've only got one team in my endangered species category. I've got Maryland, and it goes back to what you were saying. Like, they're like a decent team, and like I listened to what Curt Cignetti said about them this week going into the matchup, and everything Cignetti said was right. Like, they were undefeated, and they were up by 20 against Washington, and then they lose that game, and it's like, all right, how are they going to respond? And they have a lead in their next game, and then they lose that. And like, it kind of almost sums up their program of like, you're actually like pretty decent and you just can't do it. And it kind of feels like they're the Penn State of like the lower half where it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can only walk this line so long before it bottoms out. Right. And like, you can only walk this line of, we're going to compete and be tough and have some leads until it bottoms out. Going into the season, we did the cleveland.com, Big Ten preseason poll that we do. And one of the questions, like, which coach is most on the hot seat? And I think Fickle and Lincoln Riley were some of the more popular answers. And I went with Locksley just because, like, what is the, like, where is Maryland going? And if it's not going in the right direction under him, like, they have to make a change. And I think back to, when their basketball coach left for Villanova, there was kind of Kevin Willard, like, there was this whole thing of, like, that they're not really giving Willard what he wants in basketball because they're trying to put more in football. And it's just stupid that Maryland's putting more money in football is never a bad idea. And they went out and got a pretty damn good basketball coach to replace Willard and Buzz Williams. So it's like, they're still in a decent spot. And I think they want to, like, matter in the football conversation in the Big Ten. But if they're going to do that, like, you probably have to make a change. And that means identifying, is Locksley going 7-5, 6-6 this year? Is that good enough? Because from the outside, we say, oh, Maryland bowl eligibility, like, that's a good season for them. If you're putting more in football, you have to kind of redefine what your expectations are then. And if they can't do that, then you're in this category for me because you're an endangered species because you want to invest like the teams above you, but your coaching and your execution is in a category below you. And how do you walk that line? Do you think if you keep investing that this program and the staff is going to propel you, or are you going to keep investing only for this to bottom out? And that's why they're kind of in this weird in between. They're the only team I have here just because I don't know what to make of them because they have so much in place to be good. And they have, what's Ely, like the number one edge rusher in his class, Zion Ely, or like the number one player in his class.
He's like the number one player, yeah.
Yeah, like you've got, like, there's a lot of good happening at Maryland football. So, like, when is it going to happen? And it kind of feels like if it doesn't happen in these next 5 years, and I mean happen in the sense of, like, in these next 5 years, can you have can you be part of the conversation going into November, right? Like, maybe you lose a few games at the end and you finish 9-3 or 8-4 or something like that. But, like, can you be in the conversation long enough? They were just about to be part of this conversation. I told you guys last year when the Big Ten released its schedules, I said, Maryland's got the Indiana schedule. Like look at their schedule. It lines up. Like, they had Washington at home. They could have beat them. They were at UCLA. Like, Maryland had everything in place to be like 7-0 at this point. And it slipped away because of coaching and execution. And it's like, everything's right there. Like, you got the schedule. And at some point in these next 5 years, they'll probably get the schedule again. And it's like, can you take advantage of it? And if not, then you're going to bottom out before you rise up.
Andrew, let's move into your endangered species.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more significant here. I'll get to Maryland in a second. Northwestern I have here because like they have had solid teams in the last years, like better than you think. Like go look at their past seasons. Like they had Pat Fitzgerald obviously for a very long time. Like David Braun came in his first year in kind of awful circumstances and did pretty well. Like they're building a new stadium. Like it feels like investment is there. But for Northwestern, it just feels like that can slip pretty quick. Illinois is a similar concept. It's probably Illinois and Minnesota are in that same mix of like the history of those two programs are not great. Like before, we were talking about this beforehand, and God bless Bill Landis because I was getting attacked at the Woody for saying that I think PJ Fleck is a good coach, and Bill kind of like looked over and he was like, he's like maybe going to be the winningest coach in Minnesota history if he stays a few more years, and I think that's important to remember that like Minnesota has not done a ton historically. I think like the last time you have to go back to their like winningest coach was like World War II. Like it's not a great historical program, and PJ Fleck has made them like an 8-win program. And he said at his media day, like, this is what I do. I'm PJ Fleck. I win with less. And he did the whole voice and everything like that. But like like if he bounces, like what is the stability there beyond a coach? Like what is the investment there? And that's why I have endangered species where it's like what like it to me it has to be two things. It has to be buy-in from the university and boosters and fan support and all that, and then it's a coach. And I think I don't know what the buy-in and investment and everything fan support from Minnesota and Illinois is. I know I know they have solid coaches. I think we all like Bielema. I think we all have somewhat of varying opinions about PJ Fleck, but those two programs are kind of hanging on by a coach. And like, let's say PJ Fleck leaves this offseason and gets a job. Like, what if PJ Fleck goes to UCLA? Is Minnesota an endangered species? No, I think they're rebuilding. Like, I think that's a problem. So that's why I have them there, because they didn't meet both criteria. They only meet one. Maryland is the more fascinating one because somebody just put in our chat, can Maryland do what Indiana has done the last 2 years? And the answer is unequivocally yes. They need the right coach, but the support is there. Their quarterback right now is very, very good. He was a top 100 quarterback, Malik Washington. They have Zahir Mathis, a top 100 defensive end from Philly, who his recruitment came down to NIL. And he's now kicking butt at Maryland. He's had a pretty good year for a freshman. Zion Ely, you mentioned it, Stefan. Like, they have had really good players, and they're one of those programs that you look at and you're like, oh yeah, that guy went to Maryland. Oh yeah, that guy went to Maryland. That guy went to Maryland. How did it? And you can kind of piece it together, but they are endangered in the way of, like Stefan was talking about, the basketball buy-in, the DC area, like the DC like metro area going up to Baltimore and things like that. They love basketball, and there's a lot of people that will say, why are we putting all this money in football? Let's become Juan Dixon, Steve Blake, Gary Williams basketball powerhouse again. And I think there's some infighting there, but Kevin Plank is the Under Armour guy, and he went to Maryland. Like, the money is not lacking at Maryland. And frankly, you could convince me, like, I don't know if Loxley's the guy. I don't think he is. You get the right coach in there, the support is going to follow. And Maryland, to me, could be one of those teams that does that, which is why I almost had them in sleepers, because I think the fan support would be there. I think the money would be there. And that is just as important. And if you hire the right coach, man, like, what happens if they have a better coach than Mike Loxley right now? Where are they? I don't know. Probably better than what they're at right now. They've got a great quarterback for the future to build on. They're going to have to pay to keep him, but Maryland to me is a fascinating idea.
Okay, I'm ready to talk about Michigan State now. So you can do your thing, Brennan. I think this is a disappointing year for Michigan State and Jonathan Smith. I think it's a disappointing year. I have them in my endangered species category because I want to present a question. Michigan State is an endangered species, and I think it's Mel Tucker's fault, right?
Probably fair.
Mark D'Antonio won a Big Ten championship. They made bowl games. He has 11 win seasons. He's made a college football playoff. He has a 13-win season, multiple 10-win seasons, right? Like he had Michigan State rolling in a way that they were never the best team in the Big Ten. But I think in this era of college football, I think they would be in the college football playoff or bust category. That era of Mark D'Antonio.
Yeah.
He retired. They brought in Mel Tucker. His first year was during COVID, so you almost throw it out. The fact that he went 2-5, it just was a rough year. And then he literally did what Cignetti did. He went and portaled as much as a man can portal. And he had a top 5 team in the country coming to Columbus the second to the last week of the season. And then CJ Stroud dropped 50 in the first half on him. And they have not been the same since that game, both on the field and then also some of Mel Tucker's issues off of the field, which have been well documented at this point, why he ended up getting fired. But think about what happened, because didn't Kirk Cignetti kind of get the same thing where they offered him an extension right before the Ohio State game last year, if I'm remembering that correctly? They did that with Mel Tucker. They gave Mel Tucker like $100 million right before he played Ohio State, which kudos to Mel Tucker's agent, because if he'd have got that money right after that game, it wouldn't have been $100 million. But it's the same formula, except Kirk Cignetti didn't do something crazy off the field, away from football, that now like Indiana is having to start from scratch again and find lightning in the bottle again. Mel Tucker was supposed to be that for Michigan State. So when we're talking about, oh, you're coming into a rough situation, like this is not the first time that a coach is walking into a situation where he's got to like rebuild things, not just on the field, but off of the field. And you did bring a lot of Oregon State with you. Aiden Childs was at Oregon State with you, sitting behind DJ. Aiden Child has not taken that next step, even though he has all the traits in the world. They went 5-7 last year, and they're 3-5 right now, and I don't think it's going to get much better than this. So when I put them in the endangered species category, it's because I don't think Michigan State can ever get back to what it was with Mark D'Antonio. I think their ceiling is CFP or bust as a program. I no longer think that is the case. I don't think they can get back there. And it's because it's Mel Tucker's fault that they can't get back there. This is the wrong time to have a bump. It's almost like being a race car. I don't know. I don't watch NASCAR, but there's times when I know there's times when you can beat the car that comes out that says everybody has to go in for like car checks and stuff like that. Is that
the pace car?
Pace car. Yeah. There's times where you probably shouldn't be behind that pace car. You should probably like steal a lap back by rushing ahead of that pace car. You can do that, right? Is that?
Oh, I was going to say, I hate to break it to you, but even the number one car in the field can't pass the pace car. So I don't know if that's the best example.
Do an NBA analogy. Stick to what you know.
Yeah.
I try, man. Listen, I try to relate to everybody. Okay.
I hate to break it to you,
but you guys do understand. There are times in a race where you probably shouldn't have a flat tire, because it's going to be very hard to catch up after that. And I'm wondering if right now this is Michigan State's flat tire. And now they're behind 4 or 5 laps. Huh?
We got there.
Yeah. Listen, I don't watch that score. It's fun. So that's why I have Michigan State in that tier. I noticed none of you guys have the big boys in the endangered species tier.
I love that this graphic came up and you were like, let's talk Michigan State. And I was like, let's not.
That Michigan State is the least interesting team that you have in your endangered species tier.
Okay, so because we can't be here for 3 hours, I'm going to ask you guys, and Brendan, just keep my graphic up. Just keep mine up.
Yep.
We're going to talk about these teams here. So when you talk about them in the tier you do have them in, don't talk about them in the tier you actually do have them in.
Mm-hmm.
Which of these 3 teams you want to start with, Stefan?
Let's start with Iowa, because I think Buckeye Ryan in the chat is right. Like they're in the playoff conversation this year, whether AP voters want to admit it or not.
They are 100% in the playoff conversation. Okay, where's Iowa at for you? What tier are they in?
For me, they are in the potential sleepers tier.
Cool. Gillis?
Same thing.
Listen, man, let me on the Zoom call next time you guys do this, okay? I agree. If we were doing this for the 2025 season, I think they would be in the potential sleepers tier, maybe even the CFP or bust tier. Kirk Ferentz is 70 years old. None of us know what Iowa is without Kirk Ferentz. And because we are doing a projection of how this is going to go, can anybody say for certain that Kirk Ferentz is going to be at Iowa for another 5 years at 70 years old?
Probably not with a ton of certainty.
Okay. That is why I have them in the endangered
Although,
species category.
Him retiring, I'll believe it when it happens.
Sure, of course. Listen, if anybody knows people who retire but don't actually retire, it's us. Okay, we all know that. But that is in the back of my mind. He's 70 years old. And there's always a ceiling with Iowa. Can Iowa ever really leave the potential sleepers tier with how they play football?
Yeah.
You think so? As in go up?
I think they can go up to tier 2. I don't think they'll ever get to tier 1, but I think they could go to tier 2.
Yeah, but I don't know.
The thing with me of like why I had them in potential sleepers is they fit the mold of the endangered species thing, where it's like you feel like what I was saying with Maryland. Like at some point, it's got to bottom out. I don't know, man. It's been 20 years and they've been the same thing. Like I don't think it's gonna bottom out. Like it's gonna be what it is, and they're gonna be a team every year where we say, could they make the playoff? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, and it seems like everybody there is kind of fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
They're just in the mix, but they're not. But like it's not like if they don't make the playoff 3 times over the next 5 years, I don't know if we're going to be going, shame on you, Iowa, you failed as a program. But also, if they do make the playoff 3 out of the next 5 years, we're not going to be like, wow, Iowa, you finally. No, we're just like, all right, well, they just kind of they exist.
They are what they are. Like their coach before, they had a very long coach before, like tenure before the current guy. Like Hayden Fry was their coach beforehand. Tell me if this sounds familiar. I'm not going to read off their entire record, but starting in his 3rd year, 8-4, 8-4, 9-3, 8-4-1, 10-2, 9-3, 10-3, 6-4-3, 5-6, 8-4, 10-1-1.
Yes.
Sounds familiar? Sound like they've been this for 50 years.
So that's why when I say, like, do I think they can move up? No. Do I think they can move down? No. Unless there's a change in leadership.
One of our commenters is exactly right. They're number 2 right now in total defense. Imagine if they had an offense. I think that's exactly why I have them in tier 3, because that's just what they've always been. And it's like, man, what if they get an offense? But they're always going to have good defense, good line play, good running game.
As long as Kirk Ferentz is the head coach.
But I just said that this is what they've been.
Yeah, that was 40. That was 50 years ago, dude. Like Kirk Ferentz has been there forever and a day. Like this is a different era of college football.
Future success.
They have never had to make a change in coaching in an era where there was fundamental changes to college football. Kirk Ferentz was there through the AP poll and the BCS in the 14 playoff and now the 12-team playoff. The last guy they had before that was there when they were just voting on national champions. This will be the first time Iowa is making a decision about leadership while the sport is actively changing. So this is a different set of rules. So like what they've always been, Indiana is like what they've always been was stunk. And none of us have mentioned Indiana yet in the always stunk category. This is new. This is a new era of college football. And when you've never done something and now you have to do it, I don't think Iowa is if he retires tomorrow, if he says, this is my last season of college football, I don't think Iowa's a destination job.
I don't know about that. For what they've been, you can't question the fan support. It's one of the 5 toughest environments in the Big Ten consistently.
No, but in this,
and they pack it out. I think they've got a good level of fan investment.
But is it a destination job for? I don't know. Like, is Brian Kelly going to be lining up to be Iowa's next head coach? Is James Franklin going to be lining up to be Iowa's next? That's what I mean.
I was just going to say James Franklin would be a great fit there.
Because he has no pressure. It's a good job. I don't think it's a great job. I don't think it's a bad job. I think it's a good job for the 2 people who have had it over the past 45 years. And I'm not going to 100% for certain say that if they had to make a new hire tomorrow, that the next 5 years are going to just be more of the same, when the world that the next 5 years are going to present are very different than the last 100 years that Iowa has been able to live in. I have them in endangered species because they have a 70-year-old coach who plays in a certain way that he has mastered living on the fence in a way James Franklin could never master it.
Yeah.
And what happened with James Franklin? He eventually fell one way or the other. He just fell towards failure. So that's why I have them there.
This is kind of an out there thing, but part of me, like, what I like about the idea of Iowa beyond fan investment, like this is a really out there thing, and there's going to be some people who are watching who are just like, that makes no sense. They're like, I think the Caitlin Clark effect can help football too. Like, I think Iowa can be cool. And I think, like, whenever Ferentz decides to retire, whenever they decide, like, hey, how about we move on here? Like, I think there can be an element of Iowa that's still cool. And I'm interested to see if that maybe results in a better hire than we would expect.
So I'm just going to let you in on a little bit of a insider baseball thing. Brennan's in college. That's our producer. And the reason why I've been speeding us along is because, I don't know, he has to go to class, those type of things. So we try to be done by 12:30. He just told me his class got canceled. I was getting ready to text this to him, and I'm just going to say it here. Brennan, this is called the universe saying thank you for killing you the first 3 days. So there you go. We got time to hang out. We're still not going to keep Brennan any longer than 1 o'clock, though, because that's ridiculous. Okay, Gillis, I got Penn State and USC. Which one you want to go with next?
Which fight do I want to have?
That's a great way to put this.
Let's do USC because I think Penn State can help springboard us into the other teams that we have not talked about.
You said Penn State?
No, I think we talk USC.
Okay, let's talk USC. They're a blue blood, so there are expectations that come with being a blue blood. They should be in the natty or bust tier. Is that a fair thing to say? That USC as a blue blood should be in the natty or bust tier?
As a blue blood, yeah. As a, hey, let's be real about what the program is.
Okay. Okay, so if we're going to be real about what the program is, are we seeing evidence right now that Lincoln Riley can consistently have them in CFP or bust or potential sleepers tier?
No.
Okay. You can't create new blue bloods because that's not just about who's winning and who's not winning. That's about old money versus new money. Like, the blue bloods are the blue bloods. It's not changing. But I think some of the blue bloods are in for a rude awakening. And I think USC is the ultimate example of, just because you are a blue blood and the brand and all those things doesn't mean that you don't need to put the work in that's necessary to have the tangible results that a blue blood should have. And we talked about UCLA this way, right? Do you think the investment is there, that people care enough? I think you can say the same thing about USC. They just have a higher floor. So it would take them longer to bottom out the way UCLA has. But I don't know. Maybe I think differently about USC had they beaten Notre Dame at Notre Dame, because that would have been such a fundamentally important win for that program, especially coming off the Michigan game. But you beat a bad Michigan team and you followed that up with doing what? So I think they're in danger. And now, in danger doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. In danger for Michigan State and Iowa, for me, means that they might just fall off a cliff. Endangered for USC is they never get back to what they were. And we're going to be looking at this, and Gillis is going to like this and be going, you know, the great thing about the old days, they're the old days.
The old days. Shout out the Wire.
And with so much changing in college football, there comes a point when that book does close if you don't actively keep it open. And I don't
you
think
think-
USC is actively trying to keep that. I think they're trying. I just don't think they're doing a good job of making sure that door keeps open. And the longer you go without succeeding, the harder it becomes. And the more often Dan Lanning walks into Los Angeles and Southern California and steals more of your players.
I think what I'm curious with this too, though, is like Iowa and USC, like in their ecosystem, how is it being perceived? Because our tier 2, we defined it as more than 2 CFP misses is probably a failure. What we think of USC might not be what their fans still think of it, though, and they might still view it as it's a failure, and that's why we talk about Lincoln Riley on the hot seat. If we don't talk about USC and USC expectations, is Lincoln Riley on the hot seat? I don't know. He had a guy win a Heisman. He had some decent years in the Pac-12. They're on pace to go probably like 9-3 this year, 8-4 at the worst. Like, we're still talking about it like USC though. So like Jordan in the comments had said, like, not with the current state of the program. I agree, but do they view it as that? Does USC view their program as, hey, we're not the blue blood that we once were? Not now. I don't think so, and not at least for the next 5 years. Could in 10 years, are we going to look back at USC and say, man, another decade has passed since we consider them blue blood? Like, are they still there? Yeah, I could see us getting there, but I don't know if that's going to happen these next 5 years. I think their expectations are still USC expectations, unlike, Iowa, where, like Ryder said in the comments, has Iowa shown any evidence that they want to be more than what they are? They haven't really, but USC has.
Yeah. I guess this becomes a conversation of expectations versus capability.
Right.
Then, right? Like, you can expect anything you want to expect, but that doesn't mean it's possible. Right? Like, I would say that their fan base's expectations are actively changing. Now, I think they need to slow it down a little bit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, hold on now. Don't get ahead of your skis here a little bit. But sometimes new information can present new expectations. And you're right. It's not going to happen overnight. I don't think over the next 5 years, people are going to be happy if USC is on the outside looking in for those 5 seasons, or if they just don't make the playoffs at all. But that's where I think capability versus expectations, Gillis, can be two very different things. They are still a blue blood, so maybe their expectations never change. But you know who else is also a blue blood? Nebraska. And I don't think anybody's going to have Nebraska in the championship or bust category, unless I'm missing something here. In fact, I don't know where you guys are going to have them. We'll get there when we get there. But regardless of what category they are in, I think that if you had to say where are they closer to being, endangered species or college football playoff or bust, I think you would go endangered species if you only were allowed to pick those two extremes with Nebraska. And I am not. Essentially, what I'm saying is, as an endangered species, you can turn into Nebraska very quickly. Where it was great when it was great, it's why you're a blue blood, but that's not what your current reality is anymore. You are not. You are a blue blood, but a blue blood in name only.
Bryson Shaw. I think. Look, I'm going to take the optimistic viewpoint of USC here.
Okay.
I think they are getting better with we have to adjust to the Big Ten mindset.
Mm-hmm.
The Michigan game, they pushed Michigan around. Like they were better on the lines of scrimmage, and like Jakeem Stewart is there now. One of the reasons why I kind of think highly of them, like I know they have a ton of recruits. They have the number 1 overall class. I'm looking at it right now in the rankings. They do have 35 commits. Like, you look at their average player ranking, you're definitely bumping them down from schools like Georgia and Bama and Notre Dame, like schools that are in that next kind of ranking of like, hey, this team probably has a better group of quality than you just have the quantity, which is why you're there. But like their recruiting class is still good. And I think they've kind of figured it out. Like, they've got defensive linemen in the top 50, offensive linemen in the top 100. Like, I think they've kind of realized, like, we need to play big boy football. I think the Michigan game was indication of progress that they've made. I think the Notre Dame game was progress that they still have to make. Notre Dame ran for like 300 yards on them, and I know Notre Dame's running game is awesome, but like I don't care who you are, you let 300 yards on you, that's not good. So as much as we have questions about Lincoln Riley, somebody just asked, how long do they stick with Riley? I think for a few more years.
I think the next 2 to 3 years of the Lincoln Riley era are going to be a very, I don't know what the word is, but I think he's got 2 years.
Yeah, 20 this year, how they finish is interesting. 26, like their schedule in 26 is insane. So I don't know if like 11-1 is realistic for them, but if you can start to piece some stuff together in 25, 26, and then, I think he gets to 27 and then you make your decision then. But even if you think Lincoln Riley's a front runner and he can't do this and he can't do that and blah, 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 he can still coach ball to some degree, right? Like, I don't want to pretend like Lincoln Riley is just some schlub who doesn't know what he's doing and doesn't know how to coach football. His quarterback history is still good. Jordan Maeva has still been awesome. They can still get talented receivers. Mekhi Lemon has been one of the best receivers in college football this year. Like, they can still put together offense. And it's like, okay, you put together that, you start to add some NIL. It seems like they finally gotten their house in order in that regard. Like, I don't know. I think that USC's outlook, like Stefan was kind of hinting at, I think it should be higher than just like, hey, if you miss out, you're in danger of falling down. Okay, in danger of what? Because like, go look at their previous histories. Like, like the bottom of this program in the last handful of years has still been, I know it was in the Pac-12, has still been 6-6, 7-5. Like that's been the bottom. That's like scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like, the endangered species for,
that's not good.
I'm not saying it's good, but that's the floor. And I think when you're talking about the floor, when you're at 8-4, like I think the ceiling there is much more room to go for them for the ceiling. And that is much more realistic than the bottom falling out, because like somebody else said, you're going to have California kids. You're going to have kids who want to play in Los Angeles. You're going to have kids who that's alluring to. Albert Hill, a really, really talented Ohioan, found that alluring, found their NIL package alluring. Like I don't think the bottom is ever just going to completely crater out. So it's like they can find themselves stumbling down the hierarchy. Okay, to what end? I don't know. So it sounds like much more bullish on USC than you guys are.
Nebraska said the same thing.
USC's had more success than Nebraska in the last 5 years than Nebraska has.
I think USC can get to the point in Nebraska where it's like, hey, you were once a blue blood, but we don't regard you as that anymore. I just don't think it's in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I think if this class doesn't pan out, this 2026 class, which I know, Gillis, you just ran through it, it's 35 people, so that's obviously why it's ranked number one. But it's, Mark Bowman.
They do have good football players,
yeah, they got good football players in it. I think this is a era-defining class for Lincoln Riley, because you can't start winning with this class, and then
I think that's fair.
It's like, okay, yeah, USC gets California players. We're also not that far removed from the 3 best quarterbacks in the country, all being from California, and they all headed east. And 2 of them turned out to be the number 1 and number 2 picks in their respective NFL drafts. And DJ obviously didn't work out, but CJ Stroud and Brian, you had 3 chances to get a quarterback, and you got none of them. And they all went to the teams who were the best teams in college football at the time. And it's just, listen, it's not the old days. Okay, let's Penn State it. Where's Penn State for you two?
I have them in tier 2.
Okay.
Whoever steps in, I think the expectation is you're making the playoff.
Gillis, I'm assuming they're in tier 2 for you.
Yeah, we have no historical evidence. I know they've only had a handful of coaches in the last 50 years. They had Joe Pa, they had O'Brien, they had Franklin. There's no historical evidence that this team should be anything other than a top 12 team most of the time. And then, frankly, like I said, the playoff might be 16 in a few years. Like that should be a playoff team 4 out of 5 years, 5 out of 5 years. So yeah, tier 2.
Did you two approach this more of like what they should be or what they could be?
I think I approached it of what I think they will be.
Okay.
I think Penn State's going to be just fine when a new coach steps in.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Penn State is going to hire somebody who is such a mess that it ruins the program for a handful of years, and I like that it's going to be unrecoverable for the next 3 years. Like I think whoever they hire is probably going to be pretty solid. Like the investments there, talents there in the state, I think they'll be fine.
I think Brian Hartline's a great coach.
Brian Hartline, head coach, Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator. What a world.
Yeah, that one.
I think they will make a good hire too. Until they don't make the good hire. Until they hire their version of Michigan's Rich Rodriguez. And then they follow it up with Michigan's version of Brady Hoke. And then all of a sudden, you've got 7 years there where you just fell off a cliff. And Jim Harbaugh has to spend the first 3 years of his tenure fixing everything that those two broke. And by the end of it, they won a national title. Shout out to Connor Stallions. But still, I'm not going to live in this world where good programs are immune to making stupid decisions. Just because we cover a team who has yet to make a stupid decision when it comes to coaching hire. Like, seriously, what's the last bad coaching hire Ohio State made?
Head coach? Because I was going to say we can think of assistants.
Football?
Yeah, just football.
I can say basketball.
Yeah, basketball is different. Football. When's the last head football coach that was a bad hire for Ohio State?
I think the first person people would point to because of the Michigan thing would be Cooper, but like I don't know, you look at what he did, it wasn't that bad.
That's what I'm saying. That's what we're talking about. That's the full John Cooper. If you put him in any other program, he's one of the best coaches in their program's history. But because he's at Ohio State and coaching in the biggest rivalry in sports, he is now the bottom tier. He's the Kyle McCord of the coaches. That's not realistic. That's not how this works.
Sam Williman, maybe. He coached during the Depression. Didn't win a road.
Okay. So you got to go back before. I'm not.
It tied 3 times in 1932. That's crazy. Okay,
exactly. That's not realistic. You are not supposed to go from Woody Hayes on. This is not how this is supposed to work. Especially the last 25 years. You're not supposed to go from, hey, we hired Youngstown State's coach and he wouldn't want us a natty. Hey, one of the greatest coaches in the history of college football just so happens to be from Ohio and he's just sitting around chilling because he just got it was literally killing him to coach at Florida. So he was just chilling at ESPN for a year and now he's the head coach. Oh, we promoted an OC who has been here for 2 years and has no connection to the state. And now he's just that's not realistic. At some point, normal programs make bad hires. They don't mean to do it. It just happens. Unless you're Ohio State and apparently you're recession-proof and depression-proof, apparently. So Penn State is in my endangered category because they don't have a future right now. When they have a future, depending on what the future is, probably, yeah, I'll probably put them back up there in the CFB territory with you guys, but like Michigan, this just happened to Michigan. So, like, I'm not going to do the thing of, I'm just going to assume Penn State's going to make a good hire. And he's going to be, whoever it is going to be a good hire the day they hire him. We're all going to be celebrating the hire. Whether it's Brian Hartline or Brian Kelly or Matt Rule or Bob from up the street. We're all going to go, look at the future of Penn State. It's all great. Let's see in 2 years if it was great. Do you think Michigan fans thought that Rich Rodriguez was going to be a terrible hire when they hired him?
Probably not. They wouldn't have hired him.
So, like, I think it's okay to not assume unless you're talking about Ohio State. Then there's literally no proof that Ohio State makes bad coaching hires. There is proof that every other program in the country makes bad coaching hires. So that's why they're in the endangered species list, because right now they have to make a very important decision for the future of their program at a very fundamental time in the sport. That's all it is. It's not negative. It's just make a coaching hire. I think if they still had James Franklin, I would have had them in the CFB or bust title, but they don't have James Franklin anymore. Stefan, on to the potential sleepers category.
Yeah, let's move on.
And again, as a reminder, We can't talk about them if we already talked about them.
Yeah. I made my case clear on Iowa. Illinois, I disagree with you a little bit, Gillis. I think Bielema's a good enough coach to where like this season hasn't gone as planned. I think they'll be fine. Like I'm like already buying into like Illinois being a playoff sleeper next season, like the team after the team idea. So I'm not opposed to that. Minnesota, if Fleck decides to leave, maybe it's different. Everything PJ Fleck said and done suggests that he would want to stay. So we'll see. But as long as he's there, if they're consistently going to be around 7-8 wins, then I think that they're a sleeper to get the right schedule, pull off a couple more wins and be part of the playoff conversation. Although I will say that the game at Iowa was just really disappointing to see. Like I've been buying into Minnesota, and like the loss against Ohio State, I didn't think anything of it. I just think Ohio State's that good, and like for that to happen, that was kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
Washington probably should be in tier 2. I need to see kind of that little bit of a push from Fish, and I think next year could be that, right? I think this year has been a step in the right direction, and next year could be another step for Washington to be in the playoff conversation. But I have them here right now just because I want to see it some more before I start to consistently expect playoff expectations. And I spoke about how Wisconsin was kind of the team that I'm probably too high on compared to everyone. I'm like starting to buy into Northwestern. I like what Braun's doing there. And like Gillis, you talk about history. We talk about Northwestern like they're Purdue or Indiana of the past. And they just haven't been. Pat Fitzgerald was very successful at Northwestern, and the divisions have gone away. And everything happens with Pat, and he's no longer there. And you're like Northwestern is a dumpster fire. They're building a new stadium, and they're pretty good this year and have been throughout Braun's tenure. Like maybe Northwestern's doing just what Northwestern does, and it's like, all right, dude, in 2 years when Northwestern goes 10-2, we're gonna be like, oh yeah, I guess they do randomly do this like every 5 years where they go 10-2, except now that's a playoff contender instead of winning the Big Ten West. So I'm not selling my stock on Northwestern yet, and maybe now is the time to buy it, because like Northwestern cares about football, and Northwestern's been better at football than we often give them credit for. And when I thought it was going to bottom out, when we all thought it was going to bottom out, it hasn't. And they got 5 wins right now. I don't know the rest of their schedule off the top of my head. If I were to take a guess, the way that they're playing, I don't know, 7 wins is probably in the picture for this season. They started the year. I was really worried. They started the year and it was just ugly against Tulane. And I think Tulane's a good team. They're a G5, playoff contender. But I thought Northwestern was going to give them more of a fight, and they just kind of didn't. And they've responded in a promising way. I mean, they got James Franklin fired.
I was 2 seconds from putting Northwestern in the Seahawks P or bust tier because of that. But then I had to remember, no, it's every other year that they do this. And so it's not reasonable to say, hey, can they get 3 out of 5? It's just not. Yeah. It's not a reasonable thing. And also that would have been too much. I'm with you. I think if they are in the playoff hunt every other year, I think that's perfectly fine. And I think it's also reasonable. David Braun is also why I don't feel bad for Jonathan Smith. Because he also had to take over for. Remember when he was up at the podium?
The worst situation. He had the change happened in the middle of spring football, didn't it?
No, I think it happened in the middle.
Right before
fall
season.
Yeah. Because I remember Gillis, this was like your first day on the beat, and David Braun is up there trying to like find the words to stay up at the podium. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, I'm not supposed to be in this position, but here I am in this position. And then they won 8 games. Yeah. And then obviously they did what Northwestern does. They go back the other way and go 4-8 the next year. And right now they're 5-3. I think they can just live in the potential sleeper spot. They're like Joe Burrow. Every other year they're good, and then every other year they're hurt.
I appreciate Sawyer's comment. I'm sleeping comfortably in bed on Northwestern. Yeah, I get it. I'm just saying they're going to go 10-2 in the next 5 years at some point. And everyone's going to be like, what? And we're going to be like, everyone who watches Big Ten football is going to be like, yeah, they just randomly like do this sometimes.
Yeah. I have Minnesota in this tier. I think Minnesota, there's a couple of teams I'm going to say this for, and Minnesota's the first one. But Gillis, actually, you go first, Gillis. What's your sleepers? Because maybe
the only team that I haven't talked about is Washington. I have Iowa and Nebraska in this.
Okay.
Well, actually, Nebraska too. I have Iowa, Washington, Nebraska in this mix. Washington,
Okay.
Stefan kind of took the words out of my mouth. I got to see it one more year, but like they did play for a national championship game a few years ago. I mean, like, look, everything that was good with that program left. So we'll see. Like they lost a lot after that season. But Washington has kind of been sneaky good. Like they've been like, if we're going to talk about Northwestern being like, hey, they're sneaky decent from time to time. Like Washington has been like sneaky, like top 10 from time to time. Like historically they've been good. I think, there's a good quality of athlete out there. It seems like the buy-in is there. Like they've got a good fan base. I think they are comfortably in potential sleepers where it's like, man, this team can get you if you're not careful. Nebraska's, I mean, they're just fascinating to me, for a couple of different reasons. Like they have a lot of built-in, negativity to that program, just in terms of like, or built-in, what's the word I'm looking for? Like things that hold up the program. It's hard to recruit out of Nebraska and Iowa and Kansas and field a winning football team. You got to go elsewhere. You got to go find, programs or you got to go find kids out of states that are not Nebraska and, convince them to come live in Nebraska and convince them to go. But the fan support, Jimmy Watkins will tell you, our columnist at cleveland.com, Jimmy will tell you anytime you want to talk about Nebraska that like the Cornhuskers fans will show up and they are very passionate. Like it is a crazy fan base and they do really love things, but like I don't know what's going to happen with Rule. We'll see if he goes to Penn State. Like it just kind of feels like they've been searching, trying to climb upwards. Like, have you guys ever seen the movie The Replacements? And Keanu Reeves does this speech where he's like talking about quicksand, and he's like, the more you try to get out, the deeper you fall. And you're in quicksand. Like, feels like that's been Nebraska. Like, they fired Frank Solich because they wanted to get back to Osborne, and the Pelini was going 8-4, 9-4, unacceptable that you could do that. So they fire him and they move on, and then they bring in the prodigal son, and it just feels like they have been trying to get out. But again, fan support, NIL is there. I do think Rule's a good coach. Like they've got a good quarterback. They can be something, but I don't think they're like in danger of slipping down. So potential sleepers where I have in Nebraska. Yeah, I've been holding that up for a minute. I see it. I haven't not seen it.
No, I was doing that for producer Brennan. That's how I feel about the whole. It's very hard to get teams that want to and players that want to come live in Nebraska and Iowa and Kansas. You give them money and they go live in Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas. I agree with Gillis on the Nebraska point. Outside of that, I think they're a sleeper team. I think this is just where they live. But also, this is, again, endangered species. This is where I think USC could end up getting. If they're not careful. Is where all of a sudden a team that's a blue blood, historically a great college football program, we're going, hey, don't be surprised if they make the playoff. You thought Nebraska thought they were going to get here 30 years ago? That's a bad loss for Minnesota. Right? Like that's almost like taking the air out of the bubble loss for Minnesota.
Losing in that manner.
Yeah.
Like they could have lost at Iowa and been fine, but
it's I feel like a lot of the Big Ten teams this year have had losses, whether it's Minnesota, Michigan, Washington, where it's just like, dude, this is not the time to have that type of loss. USC, like this, like really, it's the hey, even if you lose this game, just putting up the type of fight is almost a step in the right direction. And for you to get your butt whipped like that, it's like, all right, well, now you have to build that momentum all the way back up again. And so, but they're in the right place to be sleepers, and that's why I think we both have them there. I'm with you with Northwestern. I'm just with you with Northwestern.
I'll mark it. I'll mark it down for Sawyer. The 10-2 Northwestern thing. That 2027, 2028, their schedules they lend themselves to. I think 2027 they play Ohio State.
Yeah.
But 2028, I think they avoid Ohio State and Oregon. So
Northwestern needs an Indiana 2024 schedule, and they're in. And people down south are going to hate it, and I'm going to love it. That's all. I don't want to go deep in these guys because I just want to get to the college football and Boston national championship.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So Stefan, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So CFP or bust, we define this as if you miss the playoff,
But the Bryans
more than twice in the next 5 years, it's probably a failure. I think, we've talked about Penn State, Nebraska, USC. I think it's all pretty obvious why I would have them in this category. Indiana, like people know I went to Indiana. Like I think my bias for Indiana is why I hesitate to put them a tier above, right? Like they've shown, I think this year they've shown that they can contend for a national title. But to go 3 or 5 years saying that they should be a national title contender, I'm not just there yet. Next year, I think we're going to learn a lot about Indiana in the national title conversation because you're going to have the guys who have come back, the Surratts, the Aiden Fishers, Mikael Kamara, Omar Cooper, guys that have come back that were part of the kind of the OG Signetti squad last year. Let's see what it looks like when they leave. I think Signetti and his staff are good enough to where when those guys leave, they're still going to be part of the playoff conversation. Can you be part of the conversation you're currently in right now, this national title contender? I think it's kind of an interesting test. So I'm still keeping them in tier 2 before I, jump ahead of myself and start putting them in tier 1. Michigan is the interesting one for me because they should be in tier 1. And I don't know if Sharon Moore is a good coach, and everything outside of Jim Harbaugh's tenure at Michigan, the last decade plus, tells you that they are more in tier 2 than they are in tier 1.
Yep.
They're not consistently national title contenders outside of a stretch with Jim Harbaugh, where I know a lot of our listeners are just fine with me putting an asterisk next to it. I'm sure people at Michigan are just fine not putting an asterisk next to it, whatever. That stretch is the only time in, a generation that they have consistently contended for a national title. So for me to say over the course of the next 5 years with what they currently have at head coach, I don't look at Michigan and say over the course of the next 5 years, at least 3 times, we're going to be talking about them like a national title team. I think we should be talking about them like a playoff team. And I think they're still hanging on to the conversation this year. So Michigan to me is, I think every year Michigan should be capable of going 10-2. And that's part of the playoff conversation. Will there be years they go 9-3? Sure. Will there be a year where they go 11-1, 12-0? Sure. But to think that they're going to consistently over the course of 5 years be part of the national title conversation, I just don't see that. I look at what we have this year. There's like 3 or 4 teams that we think can be part of the college football or of the national title conversation.
Yep.
I think Ole Miss is a good team. I think Tennessee's fine. I think, Oregon's a pretty good team. But like right now, outside of like Ohio State, Indiana, A&M, I don't necessarily circle a ton of teams as like title contenders. And that'll develop, right? We got another month of regular season. Maybe Alabama, it emerges. Maybe Notre Dame, they get in, and now we're saying, hey, this team can win a national title. We'll see what that looks like. You have to be part of a select 5 or 6 to consistently be viewed as a national title contender. And nothing under Sharon Moore has shown me that Michigan will do that. They've shown me, based on how they closed out last season and how they've played this season, that they can be part of the college football playoff conversation. And the way they've recruited, especially this offseason, suggests that they should be part of the playoff conversation year after year. Maybe there's an exception or 2. But they are not in the national title tier yet, because I don't think anybody's talking about this program right now like a team that's going to consistently compete for national titles now that Harbaugh's gone.
Gillis, is there anybody in your tier 2 other than Michigan that we haven't talked about yet?
No. That's it. Michigan, Indiana, USC, Penn State.
Okay. We're all going to talk about Michigan and Indiana. So Michigan and Indiana it up. And Stefan doesn't want to do it because he has a degree from there. And that's fine. So
I will say
yes.
I did have Nebraska in this tier. That I know we've talked about them. I have them in this tier because like now's the if Matt Rule stays, especially now's the point of his tenure where
Yeah.
I don't think Nebraska fans are saying, all right, let's keep going 8-4. Like
That's fair.
It should
It's
start
time to
turning into
fire.
some playoffs.
That's fair. Gillis, why'd you put Michigan in Indiana in tier 2?
I'll start with Michigan. Yeah, to Stefan's point, they're not in Natty or Bust, even though they're one of the last 2 national champions, right? Like Ohio State and was last year, and then Michigan was the year before. So, well, they won the national championship. Okay, but kind of like we talked about with Washington, like everybody in that program left. Like Harbaugh left, and a lot of that team left, and then the remnants of that team that played in 24 are now gone too. Yes, you have a 5-star quarterback who, like, look, the way it's shaping out, Michigan might be a playoff team this year. They're 9, like they could get to 9-2 going into that Ohio State game, and then who knows? So that's absolutely possible. And then they've got a great receiver in Marsh, and we talk about how young they are, and that team is going to be a pain in the butt to handle in 2026 and 2027. But I'm not there yet because I don't think Sharon is at that level. Like I don't know if the talent is at that level to where Harbaugh was able to win with development and culture and all those other things. And I know everybody's going to get mad at that I just said culture, but like it's objectively true that like Mike Sainristil was an awesome player, and that like Roman Wilson was really good, and Blake Corum was really good, and Kenneth Grant and Mozzie Smith, or I think it was Mozzie Smith, and then Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham. I'm forgetting another defensive tackle in there, but it's objectively true they've had good players on those teams, good offensive linemen. They had a first-round quarterback, even if he wasn't the level that you would think he would be in the NFL. So you haven't proven it to me yet. You've got the buy-in, you've got the fan support, you've got clearly the buy-in. They've got a quarterback who costs a lot of money right now. They can money their way out of some problems, but I don't know if that's enough to beat the teams that I have in Natty or Bust. Indiana I have in this tier because unfortunately you still got to prove it to me if you're Indiana. And I understand they beat Penn State or they beat Oregon this year. Like I understand it. Aiden Hutchinson, thank you. I understand all of that. I am gonna feel much better about where I have them potentially that first Saturday of December. I want to see them get on the field with Ohio State and see what happens. And, like if they get to the Big Ten championship game and it's Ohio State and it's Indiana, Indiana, even if they lose, if they give them a game, it's like, you know what? All right. You know what? They maybe have that case to be in Natty or Bust. But the thing that I just get scared about is like, what happens when you play a Ohio State level team? And Ohio State, I think, is the best team in college football. But like, do they have the depth and the talent to do it week in, week out? Like, can you play Ohio State even if you lose, get a bye, and then play some team, play Alabama in the quarterfinal? Can Indiana hang in that regard? And I think Cignetti has proven that they can do a lot of really great things. I think Cignetti is making his case as the best coach in college football, but I need another 5 weeks. I will feel much better about whether or not they belong in tier 1 after they play Ohio State in the Big Ten title game, and maybe even in the playoff.
Okay. I have Washington and Illinois in my tier 2. Illinois' schedule this year was not that easy. I think they needed I'm saying it again. I told you I was going to bring it up again. I think Illinois needed an Indiana schedule to help them this year, because then it got you over the hump. It showed you how to win, and then you can move forward. Because I think there is a benefit for Indiana to have. I think that's the biggest benefit. They had an easy schedule last year, and it helped them build confidence, and it's why we're seeing what we're seeing this year with this team. Kirk Cignetti's a very good coach. But if they had this year's schedule last year, I don't know if we're seeing what we're seeing right now because it's a little bit different. Illinois didn't get that. They had to go on the road to Indiana, who's a good football team. They had to play Ohio State, who is the best team in college football. They just haven't had an easy schedule. And I feel the same way about Washington, and I'd maybe feel a little bit better about that had they beaten Michigan. But even then, it's like you travel across the country to do that game. You have to take that into account. I think Indiana's the only team in Ohio State are the only teams over the last 2 years who have like traveled and like won those games when they're playing like-minded opponents. So that you take that into account. But if Jets Fitz stays there for the long run, I can see that. Like Washington is historically a good football program. So them being in a college football playoff or bust tier is not crazy. And I just think they got a good coach. They got good skill players. They got a good recruiting ground. And I think they can live in this tier. Michigan is in this tier. And I don't think they can ever be a tier 1 team. It's just not the way they're built. I think they are built in a way where the playoff discussion needs to be every year. They need to be in a playoff hunt every single year. And it builds. And eventually, it all comes together and you take your shot. Even outside of the Connor Stallion stuff, that's what 2023 was. 2 years of we're in the hunt. We're in the hunt. We're in the hunt. Then you got to 2023 and you put it all together and you took your best shot and you made it. And I think that's the Michigan form. I think that's always been the Michigan formula. And it doesn't make them a less quality program because other teams might jump them and go into tier 1. It's just this is the way they go about winning. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm assuming both of you have Oregon and Ohio State as the only 2 teams in your tier 1. Okay, so Brendan, can you quickly show them just for the sake of you made the graphic? Okay, there's that one. Show
your work.
Yeah, show your work. Now let's get to mine and let's talk about it. Because Stefan's not going to brag about his alma mater. So I will. What's taking you 2 so long to get there with Indiana?
Indiana, I'll answer for first. Indiana, I know this was last year, but Indiana played 2 games against 2 elite programs.
They did.
They didn't do well. And,
No,
and Kurt Cignetti knew that. And Indiana, they had a really tough, hard-fought win against Iowa this year. And that was an important win. I'm not going to poo-poo that. That's a tough place to play. That's a tough win. They had to grind it out. They did. The Oregon win is the most impactful moment of Indiana football, and Stefan can help me fill in the blanks here in a very long time.
Everybody can help you fill in the blanks. That's the biggest win in that program's history.
Yeah, well, like Oregon could have had a miracle comeback and won that game 31-30, and it would have been like, this is still the best, because it was like they kind of proved that they belong in this sphere. The reason why I say those things though about 2024 is maybe I'm letting the talent play too much in my head, but okay, cool. Indiana beat Oregon, and that's a great win for that program. And that's an unfathomable win for that program. It's a win that 24 months ago seemed impossible. What happens in a playoff setting when they have to play Ohio State the week after they play Oregon? What happens in a playoff setting when they have to play Alabama the week? Like, I don't know if they have the, hey, we can match up week in, week out, talent-wise, depth-wise, physicality, strength. Like, we talked about Ohio State in this realm because look at Ohio State. They're replacing 5 stars, 4 stars with 5 stars, 4 stars. They're replacing these guys with, hey, if this guy goes down, in comes this 5-star. If a corner goes down, guess who's coming in the game? A 5-star. If a defensive lineman goes down, guess who's coming in the game? A 4-star. Like, this is the talent that Ohio State has built. Mm-hmm. And I looked at Indiana's team talent composite, and I understand, especially for what this team has done this year, I don't know if it's the most indicative thing, but I do think it matters if you lose a guy 2, 3, like that just happens as the course of a season. And I'll say this, like, if what happened to Ohio State injury-wise on the offensive line happened to Indiana this year, Indiana's not recovering, I don't think. I don't think they have the depth of talent to do that because every team has injuries. Every team has problems. And I want to see Indiana do it now at a week by week. This team can beat 2 great teams in a row. And I don't know if they have, I don't know if they're going to, and I want to see it. And I think the Ohio State game will be indicative, but that playoff run is going to be very, very indicative to me.
Stefan, what's taking you so long?
What's taking me so long is I'm trying to figure out if they're in the Oregon Ohio State boat or if they're in the Michigan boat, where it takes like you get a group in like the Aiden Fishers, Elijah Surratt's, and does it take a couple of years, or can they consistently just have guys that are coming in ready to go immediately, right? Like quarterback, I don't, they'll go in the portal and they'll get quarterbacks that they did it with Rourke, they did it with Mendoza. Like I'm not too worried about that, but it's like they were. I thought they were awesome last year. Obviously, the Ohio State Notre Dame games were not good, but like Elijah Surratt has taken a step forward. He's one of the 3-4 best receivers in the Big Ten, and he's even better than he was last year. Aiden Fisher is an All-American caliber linebacker. Like I just, my hesitation is like, is it going to be a team now that every year is in a national title conversation, or is this like a group comes in, give it a year or two, and then they're in that conversation? That's where I hesitate. What I will say, if for someone who wants to put Indiana in this tier, Gillis, I don't know how fair we'll see what they do against Ohio State thing is, considering what Ohio State's shown us. Like I understand Oregon doesn't have the win against Ohio State, so I'll give Lanning that. But it's like, what did Notre Dame do last year
against Indiana or against
Ohio State?
They lost.
Can I ask a question?
And it wasn't as close as the final score. So it's like, if Ohio State's a comparison, I don't think that's fair. Like I think Oregon's consistently the second best team in the Big Ten, and Indiana beat them. So it's like, I don't know. What if Bama beats Ohio State in the semis and Indiana doesn't have to face Ohio State?
Can I ask a question? Is Ohio State the bar?
No, not what Ohio State is today. I don't, because I look at Oregon on this graphic, and if Ohio State's the bar, this year's Oregon team, I don't know if they can beat Ohio State.
We didn't do this, but me putting Indiana on this tier and you guys not, and you guys making the cases for why you didn't, and I actually agree with them. I think Ohio State's on a tier by itself right now, because, and I'm gonna use both of your guys' points to say why. Gillis, you first. You're saying you want to see if Indiana can put it together for multiple weeks in a row. They smacked an Illinois team who at the time was considered a top 10 team in the country by 53 points.
By more than Ohio State did.
Yeah, but transitive property, we all know that's not always. Like football games are football games. Then they went to Iowa the next week, who we all think is a sleeper playoff team for this year, on the road, and they won that game by 5 points. Okay, so that's back-to-back. They had to bye, fine. And then you go to Oregon. And they won that game by 10. Stefan, they won that game by more than 10 points.
Yeah, I mean,
like
they outplayed Oregon. Mendoza made a bad play, but
they beat Oregon. Like it was almost like, I don't know how many people who are watching or will listen watch the LSU Texas A&M game. LSU was winning at halftime because Marcel Reed threw 2 bad interceptions, one of which was in the end zone. Texas A&M was whooping feet for 60 minutes. It's just he made some bad decisions that allowed LSU to stay in the game. That's why the game ended up being a blowout in the second half. Indiana was the better football team in that game, not just because they won on the road, but because they were fundamentally better in the skill positions and in the trenches for 60 minutes outside, which is why turnovers are so important, which is why Ryan Day emphasizes taking care of the ball. Because if you just take care of the ball and don't give teams extra possessions, they can't hang around and play a game with you. Indiana's better than Oregon this year, based off what I saw in that game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can go, let's see what they do against Ohio State. Because based on how Ohio State has played everybody else, the only team that has played Ohio State close is Texas. And that's because Ohio State decided to play with both of its hands behind its back, walking backwards. When come to find out, they probably could have just let Julian Sand go out there and sling it and won that game by 3 scores. Because even then, they won by, just like the Oregon-Indiana game, they won by 7 against Texas. But go watch the football game. They won that game by more than 7 points. They controlled the game for 60 minutes, the same way Indiana controlled the game against Oregon for 60 minutes. So if we really were going to do this, I think it's Ohio State on the tier by itself right now over the next 5 years. And Oregon and Indiana have to prove they belong on the tier with Ohio State. The reason I put Indiana on that tier is because of that 3-game stretch. And now they are just murdering teams. And not because they're running up the score at the end of the game. No, just they're murdering teams the way Ohio State murders teams now. And fine, you want to fine. There is a conversation I think to be had of it's because we lived it. We actually know what it takes to actually win a national championship in this era where it's not just, okay, can you get on the stage and win 2 games? No. Can you put it together for 3 or 4 straight games? So I do understand that element of things, Andrew, and wondering if they can do that. But if you're looking for the small window of an example of them being able to do that, I think the Illinois, Iowa, Oregon stretch is that. I think if Indiana was not a historically abysmal college football playoff program, you would not be saying, let me see it. You would not be holding last year's losses to the teams who played in the national championship game against them. I get why you're doing it.
Yeah, well,
but this Indiana is why I have Penn State where I have Penn State. Indiana is why I have USC where I have USC, because I am not going to allow what they should be to decide what they could be. When one is showing us every weekend right now what they can be and the other two are not.
The reason you're right. If Indiana had historically been winning Rose Bowls and big games, I would probably think that they could win Rose Bowls and big games. So
benefit. No, I get it. There's benefit of the doubt with that.
There's benefit of the doubt with Oregon and with Ohio State.
There is, but there's also this is new.
But the thing that I would ask is, like, I understand, like, you keep pointing to this year, and like this is an exercise for like this year, but also for the next 5 years.
Yeah,
like. Are you more confident that teams like Ohio State and Oregon can continue bringing in top 5, top 7, top 8 recruiting classes, and they are going to be in the Natty? Or do you, like, very genuinely, do you think Indiana can keep this up? Do you think, like, because Stefan was talking about the guys that are leaving, do you think Indiana can bring in number 30, number 35, number 40 ranked recruiting classes? I think they're 30 right now in 26. Can they bring in those level of recruiting classes, portal their butts off, and be at the same level as Ohio State for the next 5 years? Because I don't think so. I don't think that's sustainable.
I do, because it's more than one way to skin a cat now.
I agree, but I think their success is going to help them build long-term success. Like, I think what Kurt Cignetti is doing is going to help them build more sustainable talent and more sustainable pipelines to that. Sure. But, you know, I don't think Indiana long-term can hold itself to that standard right now. Now, if Indiana wins the Big Ten, or if they lose close to Ohio State and they win 2 or 3 playoff games, and all of a sudden you're talking about them in a different light, okay, that's very, very different. But we have not seen that yet. And yes, they've had a great 2025 season backed up by a great 2024 season for them. Like, I just want to see it in a way that makes me know and lets me know that this is sustainable beyond 25. Because I think you're looking at it in a 2025 prism. I don't think you're thinking, what is this team going to be in 2028?
No,
like that's I think Oregon and Ohio State are recruiting at a level, have coaches at a level that can do that. I think Indiana's got the coach at the level. I don't know if they are just going to keep bringing in, hey, every year we're going to bring in a Heisman candidate at quarterback. Every year we're going to bring in NFL draft picks that are off the transfer portal market. I don't know if that's sustainable every single year.
Do you think it's sustainable at Ole Miss?
I mean, Ole Miss is recruited, but here's the thing. Ole Miss is recruiting better at a level like year in and year out than Indiana is.
No, they're not.
Like, in terms of like adding like 5-star talent, I think, yeah, they are.
No, they're literally not. They're literally not. They're portal century.
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't be portal centric.
I mean, in 2026, they have the number 20 class. Indiana has 29. So it's not, I mean, it's not.
They're not.
Yeah, they're 21 right now in the team talent composite. They have 3 5-stars on their roster. Indiana has none. And they have
Okay.
20.
The question
Yeah, but
33,
wait, is that?
that's not the
Wait, is that? I'm not exactly sure how it works. So are you saying that this includes like the rankings of the guys they brought in from the portal?
Yes.
That to me doesn't matter.
No.
Indiana's shown that they'll go get a dude who's in a
I
G5
think
school and
that's
make him
fair.
into it.
But
So
also,
because last year it is funny because last year was like Ole Miss had, outside of Ohio State, maybe the best draft class in the country, and like that team failed to make the playoffs. So
yeah.
I think Indiana does more with their talent than Ole Miss has done with theirs. The only hesitation for me with Indiana, like the talent thing is obviously part of it, but it's like what you were saying there, Gillis. What does Indiana look like in 2028? For me, I'm not 100% sure what Indiana would look like in a 2026, 2027, but I trust that by 2028, the group that they brought in will be ready to contend. And then in the years between, they can be like a playoff team, maybe not quite a national title contender.
Yeah.
I think what they lack in, well, here's my star number by a website, which again stops mattering the moment they start playing football. They make up for in elite coaching. Like elite level coaching. Like Dan Lanning got out coached. And I get it. Dan Lanning's bringing in a bunch of 5 stars right now. That means he has to turn that 5 stars into something. And Oregon's a good football team. I think they just played Indiana during the regular season. But Oregon and Indiana have a lot more in common than they don't. I think Indiana's coaching staff is better than Oregon's coaching staff. Oregon just has more resources because it's Oregon, so they get better talent. But what won at the end of the day on Saturday? The better coaching won on Saturday. And I'm not living in a prison. This is 2 years in a row. We're almost 2 years into the Kirk Cinetti tenure, and so far he's lost to the reigning national champions and the team the reigning national champions beat in the national championship game.
I wonder, you talk about the historical context of Indiana. I would love to know the conversation around Indiana if they had gotten just like Penn State's draw in the playoff last year.
I think they would have beaten
Or if it was this year's form. Like, I don't know. What if Indiana doesn't play Notre Dame right away? What if Indiana beats, SMU and then battles with a Tennessee team that I don't think was all that great? It's interesting. It's interesting how quickly the conversation shifted. But I do agree, Stephen. It does almost feel like Indiana and Oregon are in this category. I want to shift the conversation to Ohio State a bit because I'm sure that's what our listeners want more. Like,
yeah, and we got to wrap up soon anyway. So
yeah, like Oregon and Indiana are like I had them in CFP or bust. I could see the case for Indiana being in tier 1 where it's like 3 out of 5 years you have legitimate national title aspirations. There is only one team in the Big Ten and maybe in the country that has 5 out of 5 years national title expectations. Yeah. And we're not it's not even being a homer. It's like Ohio State is competing for a national title every single year. You can point at years where Ryan Day has had bad defenses and those teams aren't good. Guess what those teams were contending for?
Yeah.
Title, So Ohio State does feel like it's in a tier of its own.
I think Ohio State's advantage right now is they're the only people who have successfully navigated this new era of college football. Like they got through it. They won 4 straight to win a national title. And now this year they might only need to win 3 straight, depending on what they do for the rest of the season. But there's also, to the question of why I asked, is Ohio State the bar? I don't think anybody has that bank of talent anymore, which is kind of the point here. Nobody has Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry waiting 4 years to play football. Nobody can lose Cody Simon. It's okay. We got top 10 draft pick. 10 years ago, they did. A lot of teams did. And it's why the SEC is a bit of a cesspool right now, is because Georgia used to have 7 deep at every position, and now they have 2 deep at every position because number 6 is at Vanderbilt or at Mississippi State or at Texas A&M. Even Oregon, sure, their talent is high, but they're an injury away. Their secondary is young. It's 5 stars, but there are a bunch of young dudes who have never done this before. So to your example of if Indiana would have lost its offensive lineman the way Ohio State did, they wouldn't have not won a national championship. That is true about 131 teams in FBS. Literally, the only team who did it was Ohio State. And we didn't even think they were going to do it. So They're not the bar. They're the outlier in this. And maybe if we'd added a tier 0, the outlier tier, and we could have just made the 0 a little block O for the sake of a graphic. Look at me trying to do Brennan's job better than him, and I'm not better than him at it. But they're the bar. And so yeah, they live in a world where I was almost gonna say, listen, if Ohio State doesn't win 2 rings in the next 5 years, then something went wrong, given how they look right now.
Yeah, you would have to point to like they're not retaining in the way that they've been retaining, or things of that nature.
Yeah,
something would have to change.
College football would have to have finally caught up to Ohio State.
That's the point I was making earlier too. Is like it feels like deciding the national champion isn't like, even this year, isn't going to be like who beats Ohio State. It's like, I don't know who's on the other side. It maybe benefits from like Bama beat Ohio State, but Bama's gassed because they just got hit in the mouth for 6 minutes. That's like Indiana's like, we just beat Georgia and we're going to go play Alabama now in the national championship game. And guess what? We had to play Ohio State in Indianapolis, and that's the only time we had to play them this year.
I think Indiana should purposely lose the Big Ten championship game.
I literally don't think Cignetti has that in his body.
No, he doesn't. Nobody. No coach has that. No coach is ever going to purposely lose a football game. But I'm just saying, I think it would. There's something about Ohio State having to start at home. And I'm not saying this is going to be true for every year, but like to get the spark going in front of your own people, I think really helped Ohio State in a way that if Michigan was their first loss and they had won the Big Ten championship game, and now they're sitting at home in it for a month, like it just, I don't know if they would have.
Indiana goes 12-0 and they lose to Ohio State. I think they're getting a bye anyway.
True.
So,
they are, but now they have something. They are, but now they got something to prove. Because they lost their last football game.
I think what's going to be the most interesting thing is the 1 seed gets the 8 or 9, and then in the semis gets the 4 or the 5.
Yeah.
Like, is the Big Ten champ going to drop, or is the Big Ten loser going to drop to 4 or 5, or can they stay at number 3? Because now we're talking about it's either you face Ohio State in the semi if you're the 4 seed or the 5 seed, or if you only drop to number 3, it's like, all right, you're facing Texas A&M in the semi. Yeah. And I think that's worlds different.
And if they're both undefeated, I think Indiana should try to go get the 3 seed so you can avoid Ohio
I think what the Big Ten would benefit from the most is 1 seed being the Big Ten champ, the 3 seed being the Big Ten runner-up, and then now I'm trying to do the bracket in my head, but like
6 seed or something like that
would be like Oregon, and they would have a path to facing someone. So you could have 3 of the 4 remaining teams be Big Ten teams, and if that's how the bracket lines up, I think I would predict that to happen. I think Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, outside of A&M, might be the 4 best teams in the country.
I mean, it probably should have lined up like that last year, right? But unfortunately, Oregon had to play Ohio State for sure. That's best case scenario, which is why I will be writing the week of the Big Ten championship game. Why I think Indiana should lose this game. It's going to be the best thing for them and the Big Ten. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99. After that, I hope you enjoyed the graphics because there were a lot of hard work that went.
Yeah, shout out Brennan.
Yeah, that was awesome, man. And get the text, man. 2-week free trial. Ohio State, Penn State this weekend. We got the game preview pod coming up next. So for Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis, producer Brennan, I'm Steven Means.